Hi there, and welcome to Her Season of Strength, where women over 40 reclaim their bodies, their energy, and their voices without apologies. I'm Kim Duffy, registered dietitian, personal trainer, mom, and your biggest hype woman when it comes to aging like you mean it. This show isn't about chasing skinny or counting wrinkles. It's about building real strength, physical, emotional, and hormonal. Each week, I'll share straight-talking nutrition tips, sustainable fitness strategies, and conversations that help you feel powerful in your skin once again. Menopause isn't an ending, it's only the beginning. This is your season of strength. Hello, and welcome back to Her Season of Strength podcast. I so appreciate you taking just a few minutes out of your day to listen in, and I really hope that you find our talk today interesting, because if you've ever thought that I'm sensitive to something, I'm having bloating or fatigue or joint pain or brain fog or constipation or diarrhea, and I think, it's related to something that I have eaten, and I hear it all the time, and what is the first thing that we go to? The first suspect is gluten, right? But how do you know if that's really the issue? Today, I want to break it down into plain language, what gluten actually is, what it does, what testing can tell you, and how to run your own elimination and re-challenge without falling for all the hype and paying all the money for the tests that are just basically crap. So before we dive into gluten, I have a couple little life updates. Here in a few days, I'm going to be heading down to Alabama to babysit my beautiful little grandson. So I'm working hard to get all my work done and doing some podcasts in advance so that I can unplug and enjoy and just absorb every second of being with him. So I cannot wait. On November 16th, I've been asked to be on an expert panel called Pause for Menopause through the South Asian Women's Network. The event's going to be here in Minnesota in Brooklyn Center, and since this episode is going to be coming out on November 13th, it's going to be a little too late to RSVP. I'm so sorry about that, but I'm super excited to do a podcast in the near future where I can discuss everything that we covered, because there's some other really awesome expert panelists who are doctors and other people working in the field, working with women who are going through menopause. So I should say going through postmenopause. So lastly, since Thanksgiving is coming up in a couple weeks, I cannot believe how this year has flown by. We're going to be to Christmas before we know it. I have decided to do a Black Friday offer for a 6-week strength training program, as well as 6 weeks of meal plans to get you through the holidays and into 2026. I'm giving it for 50% off, so it's only going to be $56. And the reason why I want to do this is because I feel like everyone is going through the holidays and we are just trying to get by. We are not exercising like we normally do. We're not eating like we normally do. We're going to parties. We're, probably drinking more alcohol than typical. And then we get to New Year's Day and it's like we feel like we have to reset. Well, my goal is to keep you consistent through the holidays, because this is going to start December 1 and it goes through mid-January. And it's going to help to keep you on track as you get you through the holidays, so you're not feeling like you need that reset on New Year's Day. Okay? If that is something that interests you, send me an email to info@strengthandnutrition.com with the phrase Black Friday, and I will send you all the details as soon as I have them. Otherwise, stay tuned for details. I'll probably be talking about it more on the podcast that comes out on the 20th, November 20th. So if you want to, just keep listening to the podcasts, and I'll talk a little bit more about it then. So let's dive in. I want to start really simple. What is gluten? Gluten is a protein. It's made up of 2 smaller proteins called gliadin and glutenin that naturally occur in the grains, including wheat, barley, and rye. It gives us, basically it's giving us that lovely texture of bread that's soft and stretchy and delicious to eat, okay? And it's created when we knead the bread. Not kneaded as in we need to eat as much as possible, but kneading it as in putting it on the counter and pushing it and stretching it and how we make bread, right? If you've ever made homemade bread. So gluten itself is not bad. It's just that structure building protein in it. So in some people, the body treats that kind of like it's an invader, which can trigger anything from mild discomfort to full autoimmune reactions. So most of us eat wheat in some form every single day. We might have, bread, have toast at breakfast. We might have a sandwich at lunch. We might have pasta at dinner time. That constant exposure can make it hard to know if it's helping or hurting. So, because gluten has become this buzzword, and it's not always for the right reasons. Part of that's awareness, because celiac disease used to go undiagnosed for decades, and now we actually test for it. Part of it's marketing. Everything from cereal to bottled water now brags gluten-free, and I always find it so funny because it'll say gluten-free, and it's maybe something that never had gluten in it in the first place, right? Never even had those grains in it. And then there's the fact that modern wheat is processed differently than it used to be. We eat more refined flour, less variety, and more additives. When someone cuts back on bread and they start eating more whole foods, they often feel better, and it's easy to give all the credit to gluten. I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody who's maybe traveled overseas to like Europe, and they say, I can't eat any of the bread in the United States because I react to the gluten. I have all these side effects or issues with it. And I go to, Europe or Italy or France or whatever, and I eat the bread there and I have absolutely no problem. Sometimes it can be related to, maybe in that sense, maybe it is the grain, maybe it is the preservatives, maybe it is the other things that we're adding to it or using in those breads here in the United States. Who knows? So some symptoms of gluten-related issues, they're all over the place. They can be bloating, gas, diarrhea, or constipation. They can be extreme fatigue or brain fog, headaches, joint pain, or even skin rashes. And they don't always hit right after you eat it. Sometimes it's the next day. And that makes it easy to blame gluten when the real trigger might be something else. It could be stress. It could be lack of sleep. It could be other foods that are messing with your digestion. And that's why testing and a structured approach matter more than just guesswork. Okay, so let's clear up some of the terms because this is where people get mixed up. So first of all, celiac disease. It's an actual autoimmune condition. Your immune system physically attacks your small intestine whenever you're eating gluten. Over time, that can lead to nutrient deficiencies, it can lead to bone loss, and then extreme fatigue. The way we diagnose celiac disease is with blood work, specifically a test called TTG-IgA and total IgA tests. And sometimes they'll do a biopsy. And yes, you need to be eating gluten for those tests to actually work. So I know that seems a little weird, right? Wheat allergy is different. It's an actual allergic reaction that usually happens very quickly. You get maybe itching, hives, swelling, and sometimes it can be even trouble breathing. It's confirmed through allergy testing. Now, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, it sits kind of right in the between. You don't have celiac or you don't have an allergy, but you still feel kind of crummy after eating gluten. There's no official blood test yet, so diagnosis is based on your symptoms improving when you remove gluten and returning when you add it back. And here's the twist. Some people who think they're reacting to gluten are actually reacting to something else called FODMAPs, which brings me to the next piece. So what does FODMAP or FODMAP stand for? It stands for fermentable, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Basically, certain types of carbs that can be tough for some guts to break down. And where do we find FODMAPs? They're found in things like wheat, rye, barley, which also have gluten, right? Onions, garlic, cauliflower, apples, pears, peaches, beans, and lentils, and sweeteners like sorbitol or xylitol. And these foods ferment in our guts, which can cause things like gas, bloating, cramps, especially if your gut bacteria are out of balance or your digestive tract is sensitive. And you can read more about that, or you can listen to more about that in my episode 10, which came out on October 2nd. It's called What's Your Gut Telling You? If that's something like that, if you want to know a little bit more about that. So sometimes when people cut out gluten and feel better, it's not the gluten at all. It's the drop in FODMAPs. So that's why I like to help women test things methodically instead of cutting out everything at once. So if you think gluten might be an issue, start with actual testing. If you are still eating gluten, ask your provider for a TTG-IgA and a total IgA test. And if they're positive, you might need a biopsy to confirm if you have celiac disease. But if they're negative, but you're still having symptoms, you can do a couple tests called HLA-DQ2 or DQ8 genetic testing. And if both of those are negative, you know that celiac is basically ruled out. So if you're already gluten-free, the tests won't be accurate. You need to add gluten back. And you can do that by adding in 1 slice of bread a day for 6 to 12 weeks before testing. It's not fun if you're having symptoms related to it, but it is worth it if you want a clear answer. If you suspect that you have an allergy, ask for wheat-specific IgE or skin prick testing. And please, skip the mail-in food sensitivity kits that test the IgG antibodies. Those don't diagnose intolerance. They just show what foods that you've eaten recently. Save your money, okay? If celiac and wheat allergy are ruled out, you can try a short-term elimination diet. So here's how we can do that safely and without going crazy. Number 1, you need to commit to it for 4 to 6 weeks. If you're only going to do it for a few days or a week, it's not going to be beneficial, okay? In those 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to remove all obvious and hidden gluten. So wheat, barley, rye, malt, brewer's yeast. Yep, you're not going to be able to drink beer, sorry. Soy sauce, unless it's labeled gluten-free, and non-certified oats. 2, you're going to eat real food. So you're going to focus on food like rice, potatoes, quinoa, corn, beans, fruits, veggies, eggs, meat, fish, yogurt. Simple, nourishing foods. Okay? Then we don't have to worry about, if something's got this ingredient label that there's a million things in it, you don't have to worry about breaking them apart and figuring out if any of them include gluten. Okay? 3, read every label. If you truly want to be good about this, you need to read because gluten hides in many, many things. It hides in things like soups, sauces, spice mixes, even supplements. Number 4, you're going to keep a daily log. So you're going to rate your digestion, your energy, your mood, your skin, if you're having any breakouts, or if you're having any kind of joint issues, joint discomfort. And then 5, after 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to reintroduce gluten, 1 serving a day, like 1 slice of bread, for about 2 weeks. If you see that those symptoms return, obviously, gluten might be part of the issue. And if not, it's probably something else. And don't stay 100% gluten-free forever unless you have to. The diet can get restrictive and it can really make social eating stressful. The goal here is information, not lifelong restriction for no reason. Okay? And if you find that you genuinely do better gluten-free, the good news is there's tons of ways to eat well. You can do, things like rice bowls, tacos, stir-fry, chili, omelets, yogurt bowls. None of that requires gluten. So stick with naturally gluten-free foods instead of relying on the gluten-free cookies and the breads and all of those great gluten-free options that are just as processed as their wheat versions. And if you're eating out, don't be afraid to ask questions about cross-contact, right? Because restaurants deal with this all the time now, and it's not weird to ask. You want to make sure they're not, cutting on a cutting board that they've been cutting, regular bread that contains gluten or something like that. I've worked with, plenty of women who were sure that gluten was the problem, and sometimes it was, but other times it turned out to be stress or poor sleep or skipping meals and then overeating later. Once we cleaned up their eating rhythm and managed stress, their gluten problem disappears. And then there's those who do have celiac, finally diagnosed after years of not feeling right, and when they go gluten-free, their energy and digestion change completely. And the point is that your body has its own language, right? The more patient you are learning it, the clearer it becomes. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Gluten isn't automatically the bad guy. If you suspect a problem, test before eliminating. And if you do go gluten-free, do it fully and temporarily, and then reintroduce and just observe symptoms. Don't rely, on the internet fear or the trendy diets. Use data from your own body. Just because it works for, your neighbor next door doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, work for you. And if this episode helped you to understand gluten just a little better, share it with a friend who's been struggling with similar GI symptoms. And if you haven't yet, I would love it if you'd leave a quick rating or review. It helps other women to find the show and start making sense of their own nutrition journeys. Because you know what? This is about progress over perfection. We're in this for the long haul, and this is your season of strength. Have a fantastic day.